Please welcome Roger Hinshaw, Market President at Bank of America and Region Executive for Global Commercial Bank.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. So as we look to Oregon's future, one key question is how Oregon can take advantage of growing global trade. Many of you here know that this is a topic I personally care a great deal about, my company cares a great deal about, since the role of trade is so critical to our local economy. That's why for many years now, Bank of America has sponsored PBA's annual Value of Jobs report, including the recently released Oregon State of Trade report. To help us address this topic of trade, it's my honor to have Senator Wyden back to the stage. As ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee and the Subcommittee on Trade, Senator Wyden is one of the most influential policymakers in America on trade policy. So welcome, Senator Wyden.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to set the stage here with a few statistics on the screens behind me. Trade is clearly in the DNA of our state. It's a key driver for our economy, and it's an important growth opportunity for all Oregon businesses. The data on slide 1 shows that in 2017, our state produced and exported $28 billion in goods and services, contributed a full 12% to Oregon's overall GDP. Slide 2 shows 1 in 5 jobs in Oregon are supported by our trading activity. That's more than 500,000 workers. Trade also connects urban and rural economies in Oregon, since we find that trade-dependent jobs exist in every county in the state. What's more, we know that these jobs are great jobs. On average, a worker in a trade-related company will earn 11% or more in wages than their counterparts do working at non-trading firms. Okay, so with that background shared, let's dive right in.
Good.
And you had an opportunity.
Anything going on in trade right now?
Just a few things, Senator Wyden, and we hope you're going to illuminate us on those. So again, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. You touched on trade in your previous section, but as those statistics that I just put up demonstrated, trade is already very important for this state. Looking ahead, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for expanding trade for Oregon businesses? And specifically, what products and services, and where do you see the growing markets?
Roger, it obviously has been an extraordinary week as it relates to trade, both with China, USMCA. And I think the first thing that I would say is back when Donald Trump took office, I went in with Orrin Hatch. We've had other conversations. We said, Mr. President, we agree with you that we have been victimized by trade cheats in the past. We'll support that. But we can't just say we're going to put tariffs on everything every single time we have a slight disagreement with somebody. And Oregon has really taken a very significant hit. And you see that all the way from farmers in Eastern Oregon to tech in the metropolitan area with these tariffs. And I want, first of all, everybody in this audience to know, as the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee, I feel that trade done right is putting together a toolbox with a whole set of areas where we can help all of you in your businesses, but we cannot just tariff everything to growth and success. And I think we finally got a little bit of relief in the last week in terms of tariffs, and that's good news for Oregon. Now, with respect to the two big agreements, U.S., Mexico, Canada, I think we're going to have some traditional sectors that are going to win. Wheat, wine, and dairy, for example, are going to do well. In Canada, we clear out some of our obstacles on the northern and southern borders for newer ventures in e-commerce and electronic data. But I will tell you, I have been, as I look to the future, pretty focused on the Asia-Pacific region for a couple of reasons. First, we got a lot of history, and some of our founders, Dick Wyden and others, would talk about that. We've got opportunities for everything from fruits and vegetables and computer chips and industrial goods. We got to keep zeroing in on big growth markets. Vietnam would be one example where we have had significant trade barriers, and we've got to keep working to clear them. With respect to China, certainly we got a good win here this week where the Chinese apparently have agreed to, over the next couple of years, buy several $100 million worth of goods, manufactured goods in our products. Question is, what's the follow-through going to be? What's the accountability going to be? But let's make no mistake about what we're dealing with. The Chinese hardliners in this deal that just, the phase one, as it's called, look to me like they've done pretty darn well. Because what they want, Roger, and for our friends more than anything, is they want to write the rules of the road in ways that make, particularly for our technology-driven companies, they want to write the rules of the road so as to advantage China and disadvantage us. So here's my message on China. If we go one-on-one with the Chinese, and everybody knows that I wanted to play in the NBA, it was a ridiculous idea. I got a scholarship, but I wasn't going to play in the NBA because I was too small, and I made up for it by being really slow. So I know something about going one-on-one. I think we can beat the Chinese one-on-one. But if we really want to guarantee prosperity for our part of the country, we've got to get our alliances back with China. Because if China is going up just against us, it is a very different fight and a much more difficult fight than it is if you bring back your alliances. I said this to the president. I said, Mr. President, we know that you didn't support what President Obama wanted to do, his TPP. Fine. But we've got to get these alliances back, and I think for our future, that's key for Oregon.
Agreed. Thank you for that. So let's shift gears away from China for a minute. And there was big news last week, as you alluded to, with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, or USMCA, the replacement for NAFTA, including there was a last-minute hitch, I think, yesterday in that agreement with Mexico. So what do you think is the likelihood of passage of USMCA, and what does it mean specifically for Oregon business?
Well, let me give you an anecdote that I think sums it up. Sherrod Brown and I put out a joint statement yesterday endorsing USMCA. Sherrod Brown made the news because he said this was the first trade agreement in 25 years that he has agreed to vote for. And the reason why is, again, apropos of the principles for the future, Roger, that I think are going to have to be bipartisan, is he and I wrote what has come to be known as the Brown-Wyden enforcement package. And what this is all about is that too often you write a trade agreement on a piece of paper, and it sounds good, but then everybody says they aren't going to enforce it. And I think you referenced the question of Mexico having questions about one enforcement issue. We're still going to pass this. This is going to pass in the House of Representatives this week, period, full stop.
Good.
I do believe in the Senate we'll have a different set of challenges. I'm not certain what the process will be. Chairman Grassley and I worked together, as I mentioned, on the pharmaceutical issues, so I think we will be able to find common ground. We'll pass it in the Senate as well. And apart from the areas of specific benefit, and I listed a number of them, this will give us some predictability and certainty.
Agreed.
When I get out to your businesses and folks talk to me about trade, they say more than anything, Ron, please don't just allow this tariff-orama where we just have one tariff after another. It's kind of like you have a problem, you put your 25 cents in your vending machine and out pops a tariff. People don't want that, and what they do want is some certainty and predictability. And if you're going to have growth in the private economy, and particularly what I call value-added trade, and I was glad you reinforced what I was touching on with your very good data, Roger. You cannot have businesses sitting there scratching their head and saying, gee, I wonder if the tariffs are coming off on December 15th. What if they don't? How do I make plans? So I think those are some of the big issues coming up.
I totally agree on uncertainty, so thank you for mentioning that. So for the final question on trade, let's just move to something else, and it's really more about the future, Senator Wyden. So what are your top priorities as far as trade policy going forward? Forget MCA, forget China for a while. What do we need to do to keep us competitive and to not keep introducing this whole issue of uncertainty into our economy? Because that's what's really important. So what can we do to help you?
Let me kind of shift it to a couple areas I haven't touched on, because I did kind of 2 rounds of it. I think education and infrastructure are really the key, because you cannot have big league trade growth with little league infrastructure. And I said to the president, and I'll just say it to folks here at home, I think the country missed a huge opportunity in January of 2017 when the president didn't make infrastructure his first bill. And I said to the president myself, I said, Mr. President, we know you come from New York, you've been involved in building and this kind of thing. We have every Democrat and every Republican on the Senate Finance Committee, which is the committee that has to pay for infrastructure, ready to take a portion of the repatriated money, the money that comes back in a trade deal, and use it for roads and bridges. And by the way, I think you heard us mention broadband. Our bill for infrastructure includes investment in broadband. It is not just roads and bridges. It has got to be broadband, because without broadband in particularly rural areas, they become sacrifice zones. And second, of course, is education. When companies come to see me, and I'm sure it's going to come up in your sessions today, very often they don't say, Ron, I want a tax break. Please give me a tax break. That's my top priority. In fact, to the credit of the business community in Oregon, I did not have one single business person, one single successful business person during the 2017 tax debate, which I wanted to be bipartisan, tell me, Ron, please lower the top rate for me. Not one business person in our state, and I think it really reflects our kind of broader outlook in what you all do in your business, and that is we need to use the money for high-skill training and education. And on this question of college, I share Senator Merkley's view with respect to more affordable college, but I think what we need is lifelong learning and lifelong training, because a typical person who's 40 in Oregon is going to change their job 5-6 times. So I think I touched on most of the trade-specific issues in terms of Asia and what we're going to do to benefit from USMCA and value added and the like. But the extra 2 components for a successful trade policy going forward are investment in infrastructure and making sure that we get the trained, educated workers. And based on what I hear from Oregon businesses, when they come to our office, we're right down from the Finance Committee, I say, hey, what do you think I ought to be working for? Focus on education.
Thank you. We agree with you. So thank you, Senator Wyden, for taking the time to talk trade with us. We really appreciate it. And for those wishing to explore this important topic further, please join us in the Global Trade Breakout this afternoon, led by Curtis Robinhold. Again, thank you, Senator Wyden.
Roger,
Last word.
If I can just make one more pitch, folks, for everybody coming to the Access to Capital program this afternoon for women and communities of color. I think Stephen Green, Rukaya, Monica Enam will give you a sense of what we've got to do. We've known for a long time we're going to have a more diverse workforce. In addition to going to the wonderful trade breakout that Roger talked about, I hope you'll go to the Access to Capital as well. Thanks,
Very
everybody.
good. Thank you, Senator
Thanks.
Wyden. Appreciate it.
Okay.